Hey everybody, this is Shannon, First Lady Shannon, and I am so super duper excited about tonight, and we'll jump in here a few minutes. Kristie, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome. Okay. Um, we got some people commenting and tuning in. So I want to say first, thank you guys for being on here. And feel free to chat in the comments. Hey, everybody that's got on so far. If you can hear me, I want you to put in your favorite emoji in the comments as we allow others a few minutes to get on with us. So this is our normal midweek study time. I don't want people to be confused because they don't see Pastor Duke today here on the page, but we are just elated, super duper excited to have none other than Dr. Kristie Norwood with us. And she is going to be sharing her godly wisdom and her professional expertise as we talk about faith and mental wellness. So real quick, if you don't mind, just tell people hello, Kristie, Dr. Kristie, if you don't mind.
Hey, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. Thank y'all for tuning in.
Yay! And we got some emojis kicking in. I'm trying to see people's favorite emojis. Y'all see some elephants in the room and some cats and butterflies and everything in between. So hold on just 1 second. We're gonna, if you have any questions tonight, I do want to remind everybody, feel free to put those in the comment section, and we will, depending on the time frame, we will try to get to those. And if we by chance don't get to those, we'll record it later, and if that's okay, Dr. Kristie, I'm gonna try to send that over to you.
That's fine.
Oh, okay. I want to make sure I can pick y'all up on my phone too. Okay. All right. So for those that may have not seen my face before, you probably see New Day Community Church on the screen. That is not my name. I am Shannon Duke, and I'm a proud member of New Day, where Pastor Marcus Duke, and if you don't owe you no money, my husband is the pastor and pastor there. And God just really laid on my heart to have this hour to really talk to the people of God, particularly to the people of faith during this time. We know so many people are dealing with COVID-19 and dealing with quarantine. So we know that there are some people out there that may be struggling, but I just felt like, man, we don't have to struggle alone. God doesn't desire us to struggle alone, and He has people and He has resources out there to help us. And I am on Instagram, and I just had recently came across a old buddy of mine, and she was just giving it to the people when it came to mental health awareness. And every time I would read her post, like, I would feel better. I'm like, yeah, she's right. She's right. So I wanted to get her on. And again, that is Dr. Kristie. And I already told Dr. Kristie, I'm not going to give a professional resume. I'm gonna give it to y'all like I would normally give it to y'all in person. Like she my girl, because she is. Okay. So but I met Dr. Kristie uh, a few years ago when I was a student at the University of Memphis, and she was in grad school, and she is as sweet then as she's as sweet now as she was then. And I've just known her just to be always a lady of wisdom and intelligence, and she's just doing some awesome things. And the great thing about Facebook, I have got to see her grow in her profession, and things that she has done in the mental health profession. But I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more. So without further ado, Dr. Kristie, if you don't mind, if just introducing yourself to our Facebook family, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. So first, let me just thank you all for tuning in, and thank you to your pastor and first lady. If y'all could just give it up to them in the chat. Thank you all for just creating a space, a safe space where your congregation can come together, and other people who may be following you all can come together to talk a little bit about mental health. I won't spend a ton of time talking about myself, because this really is, we want to kind of design this to give you all what you need. But I did my undergraduate degree at James Madison University in psychology, and then transitioned, as First Lady said, to Memphis. So I completed my doctoral degree in counseling psychology at the University of Memphis, and most of my work has been here on the East Coast since graduation in Virginia. So I'm down here by the beach, although we're not getting much beach these days. So I'm down here on the East Coast with, I have my beloved husband, Lester, who I need to shout out because he keeps me grounded and keeps me going. And we also have a young son, Lennox, as well. And so we're here in Virginia. The work that I do is primarily individual therapy. About 10 years of my time was spent working at the VA Medical Center. So working mostly with military veterans with a specialty in post-traumatic stress disorder. And so recently, about a year ago, God led me to transition to working with college students. So right now I get the pleasure of working with college students at Hampton University, the real HU, as they say. So I work with college students as the director of the Student Counseling Center, and I also have an opportunity to teach a course in the psychology department. So that's a little bit about me. I was raised in the church, so I will tell you all that as well. And we attend Mount Peninsula here in Yorktown, Virginia. There might be some folks from the Mount, as we call it, that are tuning in. So thank y'all for joining us as well. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. And of course, y'all wanted to know that she is a Delta. Yes, she is my sorority sister. We have love for all of MPHC,
Absolutely.
of course. But we are thankful to God for that. So let's again get into it because it is a serious topic. Again, if you have questions, number one, if you don't feel comfortable, feel free to message our church, and we will take a look at it that way, or you're welcome to put your questions in the comment box, and if time permits, we will try to get to those. And so again, Dr. Kristie, one thing I don't even think I got to mention to you is that I recently completed a devotional called Mind Games, and it's really about how we can use the Word of God to help overcome negative thoughts. But in that devotional, I really try to stress, like, it is okay to need help, to seek professional help, that God didn't create us on this world alone. So I'm always been a advocate of Jesus and a counselor, so you will, or just some mental health resources. But I wanted to see if you had any, or could talk to us about maybe the trends or current stats right now when it comes to mental health. And we know this is Mental Health Awareness Month as well, but just what you would like to share just about stats and trends, especially right now with COVID-19.
Sure, absolutely. So right now, what the data and the research is showing is that about 25% of people in the country have been diagnosed with a mental health condition. And when we look at that with communities of color, we're looking at about a 16% diagnosis rate. Now, the caveat to that is that there are a lot of stigmas associated with seeking mental health care. So there may be a lot of individuals who are part of or identify as part of a community of color who aren't seeking care. So that 16%, particularly in the African American community, is likely a lot higher. In addition to that, we see that typically women are more likely to seek mental health care versus men. And again, a lot of that centers around the stigma associated with mental health care and seeking care. Men oftentimes feel like, you know, it's not masculine if I seek mental health care. It means that I'm weak. It means that I'm crazy, a lot of people say. And so oftentimes that keeps people from seeking mental health treatment.
Yes, I was actually surprised that you just said 16% in our community, because I definitely feel that it's much more than that, and that we kind of, like you said, a stigma around it. We don't like to discuss it, especially in our communities. So could you tell us kind of like what's the difference between, or what's mental health versus a mental health diagnosis?
Yes, thank you for saying that, because sometimes we throw out these terms and we don't always know what they mean. So when we say mental health, it might have a negative stigma attached to it, but all we're referring to is the way that someone is functioning emotionally, their thought pattern, which we call how they're functioning cognitively. How are they functioning socially? Are they, you know, engaging with other people? Are they isolating themselves? Things of that nature. So when we talk about mental health, that is kind of the umbrella of which we're talking about, those specific thoughts, feelings, behaviors, their overall psychosocial functioning. When we talk about, there's kind of a new trend in terms of using the term mental wellness. So when we talk about mental wellness, that means you're kind of taking care of your mental health, right? So you're doing those activities, you might be going to therapy, you might be setting healthy boundaries with people, you are engaging in those activities that are in line with your values and in line with where God wants your life to go. But in addition to that, you are functioning in a healthy manner. When we talk about a mental health diagnosis, so that oftentimes will come from a psychologist or a therapist or a social worker or a licensed professional counselor or a psychiatrist. And so that means that someone is typically, they might be trying to function mentally well, but typically their social, their emotional, their cognitive functioning is impacting them living their life. So they may not be able to go to work. You may see them absent from church all of a sudden. They may have experienced some kind of trauma, but their functioning has hit a place where it is really getting in the way of them being able to live the life that they deserve and desire to live.
Man, so I like just came upon the term mental wellness, and I love it because I do think that we, you know, when we say mental health or I'm working on my mental health, it does kind of scare people a little bit, or like you said, has that stigma. And I have a good friend, Prophetess Dixon, who says mental wealth. You know, so that attaches, like, you know, it is important, you know, and it's nothing to be ashamed of, you know, making sure that you are mentally wealthy or mentally healthy. So I appreciate you going over that distinction. So, and
Absolutely.
everybody needs to work on, have a plan for mental wellness.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. All right. And so, again, now we're dealing with mental wellness or mental health and the church. And specifically, we at New Day, we are a predominantly, African American church, but we welcome everyone. We really do. Um, and so, but I just wanted to see or gain your thoughts about like language or common language that can make people, I guess, feel some type of way about seeking mental health or working on their mental wellness.
Absolutely. So, I know there might be a little bit of a delay in our conversation in Facebook, but I'm going to try to put this out.
Yes.
So, and you all just kind of respond when you can and finish this statement. Black people don't go to therapy. So the statement, Black people don't go to therapy. Waiting
Oh,
on it,
no.
I'm waiting on it.
I'm going to put it in the comments.
Okay. So that's one. If you go to therapy, you're crazy, right? You should be able to fast and pray everything away. God will not put more on you than you can bear. Those are some of the common statements we hear in church, and that if you're anything like me, that you were raised hearing and believing. And at the same time, those are also some of the things that keep us, particularly in the Black community, stuck. So they perpetuate this cycle of us staying unmentally well. And so I see in the chat somebody saying, because we don't want people in our business, because it makes you look weak. Beautiful. Because they're afraid of what they might learn.
Mm.
Absolutely. And the other piece is Black people don't go to therapy, they go to church. So the automatic statement with that is it has to be one or the other. And so I'm so grateful that whoever created the flyer, when you did that, you put an and there, because so you put a but in between there. And really, God designed people like me, I would like to think, to be able to place that and there so that we can have faith in him and yet seek the mental health care so that we don't continue to suffer.
Exactly. So y'all, excuse me, my grandma's calling me right now. Um, yeah, and I feel like I definitely I do see like a change somewhat in our generation, but I can definitely see a lot. Not to say those statements are not still happening, because they are, but that was definitely growing up. Like, like, why would you go to therapy? Like something is wrong with you. So some of those that you mentioned, I do, yeah, definitely keep people, I feel, in a place of bondage when God has provided some great resources for us. So do you have any tips as far as how to reconcile mental health care and trusting God at the same time?
Yeah, and that's a really big question. What I would say is that the first thing that the church sort of speaks to us is we need to trust God. And so, I often think about pastors. I'm not a pastor, but I know pastors have lots of burden on them, and I'm sure first ladies do as well, right? And if I was diagnosed with a medical condition, I might go to my pastor and I might say, his name is Pastor Alvin. I might say, Pastor Alvin, can you pray for me? I have arthritis or diabetes or just been diagnosed with cancer, right? And Pastor Alvin would stop what he was doing. He would pray with me and he would say, keep me posted and I'm going to continue to pray and fast and all that good stuff, right? But he also would say, Kristie, now you know you need to go to the doctor. He wouldn't say, just we're going to stay at home. And so there's a shift that really needs to happen in the Black community and then in the church as well. And so with that shift, we have to understand that mental health and mental health conditions are a medical condition. There's a biological component to this. For some people, there's a genetic piece. They're predisposed to mental health conditions. And so we can utilize the church as support, and there's that and again, and we have to go get the necessary medical care to keep ourselves well. Another way to think about it is that, you know, God wants us to live our greatest and most abundant life, at least in my belief. He wants us to everything that he desires for us to have. And so if we are not well, that's physically and emotionally, if we are not well, then he is not able to do all of the great things in us that he desires for us to do and to have. So it really sometimes, in terms of reconciling that, it's about trusting God enough that he's going to place someone in your life to help you carry this burden or to help you get through this season. And if we say we have faith, then on some level, we have to trust God that he's going to give us the conduit to be able to sustain us and to be able to get through these difficult times and get through what may be an actual mental health diagnosis.
Yeah, I think too, Pastor Duke would definitely tell someone in the example that you gave, not only, you know, yes, I am going to pray for you, and he's a man of big faith, but like you said, if it's a medical condition, he can't do nothing for you, you know, but we do have doctors and things of that nature in the medical profession. And I also like what you said, that mental health is a medical, when you have those mental health diagnoses, that is a medical condition. And sometimes we don't think of it, I think, as that way or treat it that way. And I think not only for pastors too, just even in our like ministry groups or our women's Bible studies, you know, that we can encourage one another, not just to, you know, pray about it, but if we know someone that, say, for instance, they are supposed to be on, I would say, maybe a type of anxiety medication, and we know they're not taking it, you know, we can be prayerful about that, but we can also, you know, encourage them to do what they can to be mentally healthy, just like we would if we knew that they had diabetes. We're not going to give them a whole plate of sugar. Now, y'all can give me a whole plate of sugar, but I'm not diabetic.
Right.
But those are some things. And even when you're saying trust in God, because I think sometimes, or I can speak for myself, that sometimes we don't pray to God for like what we consider little things. Like even praying about, God, make sure that my therapist is aligned with what, you know, that is in your will, or, you know, God bless the doctor's hands that are about to perform on me. I don't necessarily always think to pray about those things, but it would be good, or I would suggest that would be something to do when we're talking about, you know, mental health and seeking out those resources. Lord, guide me to the right places and the right people.
Absolutely. And kind of along those lines, First Lady, is kind of like oftentimes our prayer might be, take this away. And sometimes when it might be, God, show me the people that I need to help me deal with this, right? Show me what it is that you want me to learn from this experience. And put those people in my path.
Listen, you're not going to make me shout on this, y'all. I'm a little unconventional. All right, if y'all see
what
me
you
for
have
the
to
first
do.
time. And I already warned Dr. Kristie that we're not going to get me too excited up on here, but you are definitely providing some confirmation on some things. So Did you want to speak a little bit more about maybe depression and anxiety um, that can occur even with Christian people or within the church?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things, and I don't know if this happens at your church or other churches that people have attended, but I know over the years, I've heard pastors and churches kind of talk about depressive spirits or that spirit of anxiety. And so I want to kind of speak to that just a little bit. So, there can be a spirit. And when you think about a spirit may come, it may go, it may linger for a little bit. But when we talk about a clinical level of depression, that means that's a condition that is sticking with you for a decent period of time. So with depression, what that looks like is you're not just sad for a day and you're able to pick yourself. You're going to be sad for probably 2 weeks at a time. You might want to go out, get out of bed to go to Bible study or, to be part of your small group or to call, some of your guy friends or to call the pastor or first lady back, but you don't have the physical and the emotional energy to be able to do that. Your appetite may increase or it may significantly decrease. You may also have problems with sleep. You may find yourself irritable or having difficulty concentrating. These are some of the classic signs of depression. And I'll share this experience. This is really what kind of got me moving in the direction of trying to reconcile faith with therapy. I grew up in a family where it wasn't until recently that my family was sort of like, what are you doing? Black people don't go to therapy, they go to church, sort of thing. And as of late, they're definitely understanding that and appreciative of all the work that I'm doing. But I remember working with a client while I was in graduate school, and she came in, a Black female, and she said she had been dealing with depression for years. And so she went to church, she kept praying, she was fasting, and she was still experiencing these symptoms. And she went to her pastor, and the pastor said to her, you are going to hell. You need to repent right now for having these thoughts. And she almost killed herself because depression is real. And, we talked about data, and what we're seeing is that in the Black community, especially, excuse me, especially amongst younger youth, we are seeing that the rates of suicide attempts are starting to skyrocket and are starting to surpass some of the members of the majority culture. And so she ended up, fortunately, coming into therapy and not taking her life. But I think sometimes what happens, and that's not just pastors, I think sometimes with the stigmas and not being educated, we sometimes get in a space where we say, maybe it's gonna be okay. Girl, just get on your knees. You're not praying hard enough. You haven't fasted enough. Pray that depressive spirit away, when really it may be a true clinical diagnosis. So sometimes we have to ask of our loved ones, of our church family, we have to ask some of those questions to see, are they experiencing some of those symptoms that could actually not just be a spirit or a phase or a place in life, it could actually be a clinical level of depression.
Thank you for that. So if I'm taking notes and taking it all in too, and that may be, I know you'll direct us here soon on places that we can get that information, but kind of like a checklist of what you're saying to make sure that maybe it is something more that our family members or even ourselves could be experiencing, versus depression versus anxiety. So
absolutely,
more good stuff. All right, I wanted. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What were you going to say?
You are totally fine. I was just going to answer the latter part of your question, which is about anxiety. So sometimes with anxiety, what that is typically it's felt internally. So it might be, people rocking back and forth. It might be, again, difficulty concentrating, difficulty focusing. The biggest piece with anxiety is there's not a peace about you, right? Like you feel like you want to relax, but your body relax. And sometimes you're so hyper-focused on the future or hyper-focused on the past that you can't allow yourself to live in the present. And if we don't live in the present, we don't experience all of the blessings that God really has for us. And so anxiety and depression are two big diagnoses that can really impact all of us.
Mhm. Um, I yeah, I think because I know for myself, I always look forward to the future, but I do know too that I can be easily I easily have like anxious thoughts or anxious feelings. So I definitely feel what you're saying in that in trying to slow down and to thank God for the present and just be in the present. So um,
Absolutely.
I'm gonna stop just for a second and look catch some of this. Thank y'all so much for commenting and again being on with us. Um, so someone had commented that that people over 30 and younger seem to accept therapy much more than someone um, over 30 or maybe a senior. So do you want to speak to that or why like, a senior or a 50 plus person needs to, pay attention on what's going on with their mental health?
Yeah. So there's a generational and a cultural piece to this. This goes all the way back to, slavery. And it goes back to, I mean, even the late 1800s, where, as a slave, it was determined that you couldn't have a mental health condition because you weren't wealthy enough or good enough to have a mental health condition. So fields like psychology were founded on white culture, and over time they've sort of morphed. And so it makes sense that somebody who is older and part of an older generation might be more aligned with some of those pieces that historically it wasn't okay, particularly again for communities of color to seek mental health care. However, what we are also finding is this kind of dichotomy where people who are younger, so a lot of millennials, if you will, are struggling with needing the support from their family or needing the support from older generations or just wanting that validation from mother or sister so-and-so in the church, that it's okay to go to therapy. So they're still carrying some of that shame, or they're still choosing not to go because they're hearing those messages from those older generations that they need to be able to keep going, that they should be able to manage it, that, mom or dad says, I went through it, or I went through worse, this is nothing, right? So my message to individuals who are from an older generation, or just maybe from a younger generation and just are less apt to go to therapy or to believe that therapy can be useful, I would suggest just recognizing that mental health is, again, a medical condition. And I would also encourage them to do education, so to understand these different conditions. And I think, platforms like this allow that to happen because it takes conversation, right? It takes conversation for education to happen. It also takes for these two separate generations to come together and have those conversations.
Okay. Let's see. So, yes, somebody was saying that they agree about having the right therapist. That's important. When we were, just talking about earlier, even praying to God that you are placed in the right hands. Let's see. Uh, Tasha had mentioned, like even again when we were just talking about how we view mental health in the Black church and just putting on that facade, like we are not supposed to have bad days as Christians, and we know that we can have. If you're human, you're gonna probably have a bad day. My child ate my food today, so it will touch and go for a second. Um, all right, good. Again, thank you everybody for commenting And that's one of my besties was saying, conversation rules the nation. I do think it's definitely important to talk. So I see one question, and I think we'll discuss that here shortly. And that was, how can you find a therapist? Which does lead right into what I was going to ask you next, Dr. Kristie, is just available resources for mental health care. And as Ms. McKenzie was asking, how can you find a therapist?
Yeah, that's a great question. So sometimes we don't know where to start. So in terms of being able to find a therapist, I can send to you all, share some with you here, but I can also send it to you if you want to post it on your page, or if you want to send it. So Psychology Today is a really good resource, psychologytoday.com. It has a plethora of therapists of all different types of disciplines on there. The nice thing is you can go to their websites, you can see what they look like, you can look at their specialties. You also can narrow it down. If you're looking for a Christian psychotherapist, you can kind of pare it down to what you think that God is wanting you to have in terms of seeking therapy. So that's a really good resource. Another resource, particularly sometimes in communities of color, we're looking for somebody that looks like us, at least on the outside. And so Therapy for Black Girls is a movement that was started by a licensed counseling psychologist in Atlanta. And so she actually has a directory of therapists, of all female Black therapists. And so you can go on and again, check out those therapists and kind of see what they're about, what they're looking for, and what their specialty is as well. So that can be a really good resource. And then I also like the SAMHSA website. So SAMHSA is typically associated with substance abuse, but they have a behavioral health section. And so you can actually type in your zip code and find a therapist that's close to you and close proximity, and find out more information about them. And that way they're credible. You kind of have to be careful out here nowadays. And this isn't meant to be shady to anybody, but you have to be careful because sometimes people are advertising themselves as counselors, as therapists. The term life coach has come up more recently. And so it's important, psychologists, people are advertising themselves as helping professionals because it is becoming more trendy. So you have to really understand what are the credentials that this person has. So those are 3 websites you can find credible individuals. Not to say that those are the only websites, but those are 3 that I would definitely recommend. The other thing, if you have insurance, you also can look on your insurance card website, and you can see which providers are in network as well.
Yeah, so a lot of them too have like the EAP programs, like with the workplace. And I know that I have utilized that before, and oftentimes it's free, if anybody's worried about the cost. And I'm laughing just a little bit because when you were talking about that there's life coaches and things of that nature, only because I know you went to school for a long time. So you put in that work. So I definitely, think that we do still definitely have to be mindful, like when we do seek out those people, that, like you said, that they do have the right credentials, and it's just not somebody on the street. Don't come to me, y'all, for y'all mental health checkup. Please don't do that. Okay.
And I should also share, so, at different stages in our lives, we need different things. And so, sometimes a social worker might be better for you. Sometimes a life coach might be better. Sometimes a psychologist might be better. But a lot of times it's about the fit. So just because the therapist looks like you doesn't mean you all are going to mesh well. I'm not going to mesh well with every single Black female client that comes into the room. It's just not going to happen. And so sometimes it takes 2 and 3 therapists to be like, you know what, like I can vibe with this person, like we can work together and he or she can help me move towards the things that I want to move towards. Someone I think also commented, if I can, it looks like Donna mentioned in the chat about men getting in touch with a therapist. So Instagram is an amazing resource. A lot of therapists now are on Instagram and they have their websites linked to Instagram, so you can then, go ahead and continue to do your research. But there is a therapist, he's located in Richmond, Virginia, and you can follow him on Instagram at Men2Heal. And he has a whole movement dedicated to Black men. He just actually put out a book. Specifically, it's a self-help book, or workbook rather, specifically for men and targeting Black men to help them work through their emotions and their feelings. So, I see people talking a little bit about Instagram. It can be a really, really great resource. Again, everybody's on Instagram, so you need to go that second level and double check the credibility. But that is somebody that I think can be really helpful for men.
You'll have to give me that recommendation again. I didn't catch that. But I also put in, they should also check out at Dr. Kristie Norwood, because like I said, she is very helpful on Instagram. And I do like what you said too about because I do think sometimes when people decide or take that step with therapy, they maybe be turned off by like the first session, or like you said, it may not be the right fit. And I can definitely attest to that. And when I've had counseling, there's been a couple, this is a true story. I had one therapist, no joke, I think she went to sleep on me. Like, I can't tell me she didn't go to sleep on me. I believe she did. I just, seriously knew that wasn't the right fit. But I have, in my, in my mental wellness, I've had some wonderful counselors that really helped me to get out of some bad ways. In addition to having a praying family and having a prayer, all those things went together. But I'm so thankful, like when you find that person, like when you find that person, it's awesome. It is awesome. Yeah. Also I wanted to talk about too, like even if it's not therapy, what other things that you can do to cope if you're dealing with anxiety, or just wanting to make sure that you are mentally well. Because I know, for instance, things that help me, or a couple of things, are like journaling, that helps, and a lot of times I love to listen to like rain noises or just like nature noises. That kind of helps bring in some peace and help to center me, as well as those spiritual things that I'm doing. So could you talk about some things that maybe we could try?
Yeah, and right now I think all of us on some level experience or have experienced some anxiety with this entire pandemic. I haven't met anybody that has said they've seen this before. So own circumstances can definitely leave room for anxiety. So some kind of tangible things, I like what you mentioned. So journaling is really helpful. One of the things that can be extremely helpful is staying in the present. So we have what's called mindfulness, and mindfulness is about doing one thing in the moment at a time, right? And it's about looking at your environment, observing it, describing it, not trying to change it. It's about accepting what's happening to you, even if you don't like it. And so sometimes what breeds anxiety is that we always try to change it and manipulate it. And honestly, God may be putting that stuff, whatever it is, in our lives for a reason. And so, when we try to change it and manipulate it, we engage in this sort of struggle, this kind of tug of war, and it ultimately can breed anxiety. So mindfulness, you can look up Breathe to Relax. That's a really good app. It has some really good interventions. You can try, like you were saying, listening to nature sounds. Mindfulness is something you can do every single day. So I would challenge everybody tomorrow morning, do one thing in the moment and be fully present, right? So the first thing we do, I'm guilty of it too, we get up in the morning, we check our phone, see what's going on, we get rolling, right? Got to get the kids ready, grandkids, all this kind of stuff, right? And so what I would challenge you to do is build that time in. Oftentimes we focus with anxiety on our body. And so we challenge people to allow themselves to notice when they're breathing, right? Allow themselves to notice how the air is entering their body and leaving their body. The other piece I love about that is that it also gives you time to be in touch with God. So sometimes the most anxious people are the people, especially in church, that we love the most, right? Because they're so helpful, they're so useful, they're on every ministry, they're just so helpful. But meanwhile, they don't take the time to stop and just be present and in the moment. And they can't sleep, right? And they don't understand why they can't sleep, or they retire after 40, 50, 60 years of working, and they're like, I don't know why I can't sleep, I can't settle down. It's because you never allowed yourself to be present and deal with what was underlying. So doing it now will save you a lot of headache later. I usually even tell my clients, you start slow. So you can start with 1 to 2 breaths a day, 1 to 2 minutes a day of just being focused on the present. Yep, Breathe to Relax app. So journaling can be helpful, Breathe to Relax. Mindfulness meditation can be really helpful. The other piece I like to share with folks is setting boundaries, especially in this season of a pandemic. I've been really in touch with grace and trying to show people grace. I'm not always perfect. Trying to show people grace because we're all trying to figure it out. So sometimes you might have to set boundaries, and self-care is kind of an in term right now, but self-care doesn't mean going to Hawaii. It doesn't always mean going to get a pedicure, right? The funny thing is right now,
but it can mean that, right?
Absolutely.
Let's back up.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Those things. But what's so funny? God has put us in this, or God has us in this situation where we can't do all of those things that, it takes to do, like money and flying and all those kinds of things. Or at least I'm choosing not to. So we have to do things like setting boundaries with other people, or calling and checking in on other people, connecting with members of the church if they are, people that you're really connected to and that help to build your morale and your mood. The activities that we often forego when we're just like normally in the hustle and bustle, we have to get back to incorporating some of those things so we can pour into us and give God an opportunity to pour into us. So then we can be the vessel that he really wants us to be.
Man, so I like what you said. I got a Hawaii in my spirit now, but that God is giving us this chance to mentally like reset, and just some of the things that you were just sharing. And I definitely encourage my church family to let's make sure that we are checking on each other, whether that's text or a Facebook message, because I think sometimes it is important to not always focus on what's happening with you, or just, it'll kind of just get your mind off of some of those things. And then when you were talking, I was just really about the mindfulness and being present. It really made me think about Matthew 6, in which Jesus was saying, that we shouldn't worry about tomorrow, that he's got it all under control, like let's just live, today has its own troubles. Let's just be here for that. But I've seen some folks mention some other apps as well. You said Breathe to Relax, I believe, was one. And somebody had mentioned a daily devotional. and Calm app. And I think somebody also mentioned it's called Abide, which I have not used that in a while, but it is a good app as well because it has like it's faith-based, and it has like meditations and things like that that you can use. And another one that I wanted to mention, you know, 'cause like you said, we get going and going and going in the day. But YouVersion just started they have a stories within their app, and it's really like just 5 minutes just of quiet time, just you, yourself, you know, and whatever you're using, whether it's journaling, whatever you're using to cope, it can make a lot of difference, I feel, for your day. So definitely some great um, things. Someone said the power of the word no is also a great tool for mental health. I definitely feel like we all could use that.
Yes, absolutely. Setting
Uh,
boundaries.
get better at that too. So I wanted to see if uh, now anybody that's tuning in, if you do have any specific questions for Dr. Kristie, please enter those now. I will try to check real quick on our private message if anybody has anything. But we again, we're so thankful to you, Dr. Kristie, for being on here and sharing this. Like I said, if you are not following her on Instagram, please, please, please do, because it will be a blessing to you. One thing I've like that gave me an aha moment as I give people time to ask questions is that I think one of your posts was like, God did not did not get everything done in one day. And so why are we trying to do that too? And I was like, you're right. That is so true. Like, you know, like, why did I just not now figure this out? You know, and that blessed me so much. That helped my day. I'm just so thankful for what you're doing, and I want you to keep on doing it. And we are definitely
Thank
praying for
you.
God to bless your ministry. Do
Thank
you
you.
have any other things that you would like to share while we still have you here?
Yeah, I guess the other kind of piece that I would share with people is that sometimes, particularly with depression can also kind of manifest, especially with Black women, as strong Black women, and that's historical, and that can breed anxiety. So when we are checking on people, we have to ask them, we can't just say, how are you doing, sis? And be like, okay, you good? All right, great. So tell me about your day. Like, tell me what's going well, right? Because mental health, mental wellness, mental health is all about how are you doing, right? So we have to take the space to really listen to the answer, because those who are suffering are not going to necessarily come right out there and share what's really happening underneath the surface.
That's good. Like, I think too, like you said, sometimes what we talk about in the church, you know, like if somebody's going through something, we might say, well, I'll pray for you. And then we walk off, you know, like we don't, and we might pray for them later, but it's kind of, again, like you said, that mindfulness is just taking the time to stop and say, okay, you know, just be, like I said, be listening, really be interested in, you know, the mental wealth of other folks. So, I did see, I missed somebody's question. And it says, how do we empower our leaders of the church to seek out mental health checkups and therapy?
Woo!
I know.
Jesus.
Wow.
That's deep right there.
Yeah.
That is so, ask that question. I don't know. I can't see it, but it's a, because, you know, again, we're talking about data and stats, which I think are really important so that we can have an understanding of what we're dealing with. So the statistics for pastors across the country, across races, is actually going up in terms of suicide rates because they're dealing with so much. So a lot of times we come to pastors and first ladies and ministry leaders for assistance, but we really have to take the time to check in with them. Like, are you really good? Like, are you super, super, super good? How are you taking care of yourself, Pastor? We have to, the same thing they do for us, it's our responsibility to hold their arms up and do that for them as well. So if they need breaks, right, you might have a burning question and you need to be okay if Pastor Duke or First Lady Duke is not available to talk to you. Just like I need to be okay if Pastor Alvin says no, because he needs to take care of his own mental wellness so he can be okay for his sheep. And so we just have to get to a space where we're okay with that. I think the other piece, one of the things that we have several site locations for our church, and the larger of the site locations actually has a wellness center as part of it. And so they do different groups, they do wellness groups. A lot of churches are starting to do mindfulness groups. And so I think the integration is so helpful. So, you know, now I'm challenging your congregation. They, when the time is right, you know, may choose at some point to say, hey, how can we start this group? And you may have people in your congregation who could be part of that ministry, or there might be another church that's offering that right now that you all could partner with. So I think, you know, you don't always have to go out. Sometimes God gives us what we need in the house, and we just have to talk about it and find ways for it to be there. So the same way we celebrate, you know, Breast Cancer Awareness Month is the same way we need to celebrate National Screening Day for Depression in October, the same way we need to celebrate, as you all are doing, mental awareness. So we need to really integrate the two, and it's our responsibility. That's how we're going to bring people into the church and bring people to Christ.
Man, yeah, that was a really good question. And for me personally, I think as a you know, someone married to a pastor specifically, you know, just speaking to other wives out there, it is important that I feel that, you know, we're our husbands, or if your pastor's a woman, or, you know, vice versa, whatever, like we are their biggest advocate, and we can step in and make sure that we're checking on them, you know, as well, you know, from that standpoint. So I know that I probably get on my husband's nerves a lot, because I know, you know, that he is dealing with a lot of issues, you know, from other people. And it is something that he enjoys, but he is also a man. So, you know, we have to make sure, like you said, that we take care of our pastors, and we ask them how they are doing as well. So we got a couple more minutes. I think a few more questions. How do you know if you are suffering from depression or anxiety?
Oh, that's a great point. So one of the biggest pieces is, have you changed recently, or have you been changed? Have you been different for a long period of time? And are the things that I want and desire, am I moving towards those things, right? So for example, if I say I want to lose weight, but every day I'm going to McDonald's, right? I'm not towards my values, right? So am I able to move towards those things that are important to me, even when I try? And if I find myself getting stuck, then there might be something else going on. And so quite honestly, you know, only a mental health professional can really tell you or work with you really to figure out, is it depression? Is it, you know, you're just having a reaction to the pandemic, which is completely normal. So I would say if you're having those thoughts, or like on the fence, like I might actually be experiencing something, or something is different, it's best to go, you know, at least seek the help, get the assessment. They're going to ask you a ton of questions during that first appointment. They're going to get your entire history. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be talking to somebody you don't know, but there is power and healing and catharsis. So the ability to be able to speak some of the internal thoughts and emotions and feelings that sometimes we don't even share with God, even though he knows it, but inside. There's power in being able to speak to someone about that, and someone that I don't have to see every Sunday or every Wednesday, somebody that I know will keep it private and confidential and help me move towards living the life that I desire.
Thank you for that. Okay. I think this will be the last one. So it says, what are some ways to help children, and also some signs to pay attention to?
Yeah. So I love children. I have a toddler, right? So he tells me how he feels all the time. And I've tried to be mindful of my response to him, even as, especially as I'm raising him and hoping that he's an upstanding citizen and all that kind of stuff. And so children will tell you how they're feeling. So one of the things you want to do for children is to set a schedule, right? And so if they start crying often, if they start, not wanting to go to school, if they start not wanting to engage with you all, if they start becoming really defiant and start behaving differently than they would normally, then that's kind of a cue that something could be happening, right? The other thing, as I mentioned, as I have a toddler, we try to talk about what's your emotion, right? You can't just, I guess you could just cry, but what are you feeling? Or we try to give them feeling words. And again, that might feel awkward or uncomfortable, or you might think, oh, kids can't, really be in touch with their emotions, but they are more than we know. So if you think about adults, some of us now are dealing with depression or trauma or generational situations that happen because our parents or our parents' parents or our parents' parents' parents never talked to us about our emotions, right? Children are to be seen and not heard, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we create this environment where we can say, how are you feeling today? So not only how was your day, how are you feeling, right? They now have, for example, I posted on my IG, they have a Barbie. This thing gave me so much life. They have a Barbie doll, yeah, and an African-American mindfulness Barbie doll. I would have loved that as a kid. And so you can find things like that can teach your kids how to do mindfulness. They're starting the process, even as young elementary school and kindergarten, of teaching kids healthy social emotional skills. So it's some of the basics that we need to do. We need to talk to our kids about emotions. We need to teach them how to journal. You can purchase on Amazon even feeling charts, and you can help them identify with smiley faces. What are you feeling today? And doing that every single day. If they tell you they're sad, well, then what's happening? You need to also kind of challenge yourself to look them in the eye. That's how we also help children be able to communicate effectively and to communicate their emotions effectively. If we don't promote an environment in churches and at home where our kids feel comfortable talking about their emotions and dealing with them, then they grow up to be adults that are still uncomfortable dealing with their thoughts, feelings, and emotions.
That's good. That's good. Mr. Marquez said she loves it. Oh man. Okay.
Yes.
Again, want to say thank you, Dr. Kristie. We're gonna end in prayer, and this has just been so good, and I feel like some stuff that I've gotten, you probably see my head down a little bit because I had to write some stuff down. Again, Dr. Kristie's got some stuff coming out really, really soon, and I didn't know you want to talk about that, or?
I can talk about it briefly. So I have a website that should be up and running in the next week or so. I'm starting a resource that's going to be called Remind You, which stands for Mental Health in the Discussion. And so the entire movement is really just to help decrease the stigma of mental health, particularly in communities of colors. I feel like that's where God is calling me. And so as part of that, there will be workshops and seminars and things of this nature that hopefully one day we can do in person, but in the short term we can do virtually. And then I'm really excited because I'll be starting a podcast as well. So that's in the next couple weeks, and there will be, short snippets that people can listen to. I'll have guests on there. So there's a lot of good things that God has really just placed on my heart. And so, yes, y'all, thank y'all for this. So y'all, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll be able to keep up with everything. But y'all got the information first, so don't tell too many people. Okay.
Okay. Oh, my bad, my bad. Okay, when it's ready, we'll definitely put that out there. Again, we thank everybody for joining us. There's more to come. We just God is He is good and He is providing things for us, even in the midst of COVID 19. I just want to make sure everybody knows that we still will be having service online throughout the month of May. And you can find us here at 11 o'clock. And Pastor Duke will be sure to provide a word. And then obviously our midweek study on Wednesdays. But if you enjoyed everything, if you have any other questions, feel free to message us. If you want to see Dr. Kristie again, if you knew that, you already know your pastor already said that we got to get her again anyway. So, but if you have anything for her and some of the resources that she mentioned, hopefully we can get those out later. So let's pray. God, we just, again, thank you for this time. We thank you for this time to just talk about the resources that you have created and the way that you're using Dr. Kristie to educate and help the masses so we can be spiritually, mentally, well, in all aspects of our life. Anyone that was on this live today, that we ask that you bless them in a mighty way, that you bless them mind, body, spirit, and soul. We just thank you for what you're doing, dear God. We ask that every person that was touched by this live today, that their families and their friends be blessed, that something will be used, dear God, that they can just be in the present, like you want us to be, as we just continue to follow you and be able to give you all the glory, the honor, and the praise. In Jesus' name, amen. Good night,
Amen.
everybody. Have a
Everybody,
good
bless you
one.
all. Work on somebody this week and yourselves.